So today I want to talk about the science of fat loss, and really the science of fat loss is studying how to maximize the amount of fat that your body loses while minimizing the amount of muscle it loses. Because the fact is, whenever you lose weight, you tend to lose both fat and muscle, not in equal proportions. Just like when you try to gain weight, it's the same idea. You're not going to gain fat and muscle in the same proportions. The type of weight you gain has a lot to do with the type of exercise you do, and a little bit lesser to an extent the type of food that you eat, right? So I think it's safe to say that most people's goal is to minimize the amount of fat they have on their body and maximize the amount of muscle they maintain or keep. Now, some people take that part of the goal and take it further. And that sometimes is a concern for some people, that they want to not to gain too much muscle. But the point is that you want to maintain as much as you can and maybe put a little bit on. That being said, if somebody wants to gain muscle, they take it to a little bit more of an extreme. But the science of fat loss really talks about maximizing the fat loss and minimizing the muscle loss. And there's an order of importance in terms of what you should do to get to that end result, right? And the first one, one you've always heard before, is that you need to be in a calorie deficit. There's absolutely no way that you're going to get to this fat loss without being in a calorie deficit. No matter what anybody tells you, it is impossible. You need to be in a calorie deficit. Secondly, second order of importance, you need to be doing some progressive resistance training. And what that means is that you do resistance training, you do your strength training, you do your weights, all the ways of saying the same thing. And week by week, you need to progress. Progress the amount of weight, progress the amount of reps, progress the amount of sets. Whatever variable we're going to be talking about, you need to progressively make it more challenging week over week over week. It's not sufficient enough just to do weights. So if you're always picking up the same 2 dumbbells to do the same exercise all the time and in different rep schemes, that is not enough. It has to progress week over week. Third of all, you revisit your deficit. You need to make sure it's an appropriate deficit. If it's too much, you're going to lose much more muscle. If it's too little, maybe you're going to lose, but you're not going to lose at a rate that is going to be motivating for you. That's, I think, a challenge for most people. They're changing their body, but they're not doing it quick enough, so they're concerned, right? So what would you have to do? Sometimes you'd have to adjust your calories, how large of a deficit you're in. For most people, we're not trying to get them more than a 500 calorie deficit, which is roughly a pound a week. It's tough. It's not quite easy. And I would prefer focusing on physical activity for that change rather than nutrition, but we do what we need to get to that goal. And the fourth of all on the list is sufficient protein. You've heard this 9 million times at this point. You need to have enough protein. Roughly anywhere between 0.8 to 1 gram per pound. There's a lot of studies out there. There's a lot of different variables. The good thing is it's not risky to be above. There's no risk to having too much protein. And there actually is some studies that show that you cannot gain weight by having more protein, but only by the things that you tend to eat with the protein at other times. That being said, sufficient protein to make sure that your body has the building blocks to maintain the muscle or build muscle. And that way your body knows by signaling both resistance training and having enough protein that it wants to keep the muscle, and it'll start to turn over to use the fat as the fuel source. And lastly, the fifth thing, you need to have the appropriate type of cardiovascular exercise, cardio for short. You for sure have to do it after weights. We would not recommend doing cardio before weights for multiple reasons, but the simplest point is that you want to do the things that are most important first. So you're not going to be doing cardio first. The type of cardio that you choose should be a little bit more lower intensity. And overall, the amount of cardio you do should be less than half the time that you're doing resistance training. So if you're doing resistance training for 20, 30 minutes, your cardio really won't be more than 10-15 minutes, and it's still going to be lower intensity. And probably more than often than not, you're going to focus more on getting steps at that lower intensity than getting any sort of structured cardio in there at all. So that being said, that is the 5 main influences, order of importance, to maximize your fat loss and minimize your muscle loss.